So you need a cloak. Something that makes you look like a medieval adventurer, a wizard, an elf, hobbit, or even an assassin for hire at the back of a tavern. It must be dramatic, able to flow in the wind so you look like the main character at the party, ren fair, or convention floor. But the only problem is you don't know how to start, and quite possibly don't own a sewing machine. But what you do have is a courageous spirit to traverse the world of fabrics and embark on quite possibly your first sewing adventure. Do you accept the quest? Hello everyone, my name is Karina, I go by Kartsy on social media, and I am a costume technician, researcher, and artisan. And today's video is a step-by-step tutorial on how to make a cloak for adventurous beginners. In this video, a sewing machine is optional, as I will be teaching you the necessary skills and techniques to make the cloak entirely by hand. Hand sewing is a skill that has been used to make and repair clothing for almost all of human history, so all cloaks from ancient times, medieval Renaissance, and into the Industrial Revolution were accomplished by hand. The sewing machine didn't start to take off till after the 1850s, but even then, it only replaced the running stitch, and not the other hand sewing finishes that we will be learning today, such as the slip stitch and how to flat fell a seam. To begin this quest, you will need to acquire scissors, a tape measure, pins, white chalk or a pencil or pen, matching thread, thimble armor for your fingers, hand sewing needles, an iron, access to a washing machine, and most importantly, fabric. Your first trial in this quest is to buy fabric. This is the most important step, as the material you choose will affect both the look of your cloak and how easy it is to sew. The fabric we will be using in this beginner-friendly tutorial mimics the look, warmth, and drape of wool, and doesn't fray. This material is called blizzard fleece or polar fleece. It can be found in almost every large retail chain fabric or craft store, and for beginners is more reasonably priced than wool, and easy to work with. If you're buying online, search for polar fleece fabric, and make sure to look for images of the product folded or swirling. This will help you identify if the material will work for your project, as the goal is a thick fabric. If you decide to use a material that does fray, like a woven wool or heavyweight linen, you will have the extra step of needing to fold hem the edges of the cloak. This will take a lot more time, but it is possible and will be briefly demonstrated at the end of the video. But how much fabric will you need? To figure this out, we first need to measure the desired length of your cloak. Hold the tape measure at your neck and let it fall to the floor. If you have a character or image reference, look to see if they end at floor, ankle, mid-calf, knee, or higher. Now pick where you want your cloak to end and add 5/8 to that number. This will be the number you will use to measure and cut later on. If your material frays, add 1¼ inches instead of 5/8. Fabric comes in different widths. If you're buying online or in a store, look at the bolt sticker or product details to find this number. It will normally be anywhere between 32 inches wide to 60 inches. This number minus 6 5/8 inches will be the max length your cape can be. For example, if your fabric is 60 inches wide, then the max length you will achieve is 53 3/8 inches long. Here are my yardage recommendations depending on how long you need your cape to be. For 38 inches or shorter, 2½ yards of 45 or 60 inch wide fabric. For 39 to 53 inches long, 3 yards of 60 inch wide fabric. And just like that, you're ready to purchase your fabric. Your second trial on this quest is to mark and cut your material. Scary, I know. But like a true adventurer, you're gonna face it head on. With the help of your friendly sewing wizard, of course. But before you do any of that though, you must purify your fabric in the sacred waters of your washing machine and toss it in the dryer. This step is called pre-washing and is important not only to clean the fabric, but also to allow the fabric to shrink. If you don't do this step and wash your cloak after making it, you may find it is magically shorter or tighter around your neck than you remember. So trust me and pre-wash your fabric. Once dry and ironed if needed, clear a large section of your floor and lay out your fabric flat. Warning: opening your fabric may summon beasts to your area. You want the top of the fabric to be the side you want to show when wearing the cloak. Next, fold your fabric in half, edge to edge, and make sure it is as flat as possible. You will need your measurement tape and marking tools next, so get them ready. I personally prefer to use tailor's chalk as it can rub away, but a pencil and pen can be used as well. Just note that pencil marks are a little hard to see, and pen marks, although visible, are permanent. We will be drawing a quarter of a circle on the fold of the material. This way, when the fabric opens, it becomes a half circle. Start at the top of the fold and measure down 6 inches. Then pivot this measurement out and mark 6 inches all around. You can then connect your dots to create a curve. Using your desired length plus 5/8 from before, you're going to measure out from the line you just drew all around. Then connect your dots to create a smooth curve. This extra will be used to hem the material later. Now unsheath your scissors and slice through both layers of the fabric along the curve you just drew. You can now try on the half circle and dramatically swish around. Don't abandon your fabric just yet though. Now we need to measure and draw out the hood. There are many hood styles to choose from. Short pointed hoods, rounded hoods, hoods with medieval style tails called Larry pipe, or even long pointed wizard style hoods. But first, you need to measure how tall your hood will be. Go to the mirror and place a tape measure on the top of your head. Next, hold it beside your face, down to your shoulder, and decide how floppy or tight you want your hood to be around your face. For example, here are 2 different hood heights I have used before, with 2 different results. When you have your number, add 2 inches for seam allowance and ease. On the rest of the fabric, you're going to begin your hood by marking 6 3/4 inches perpendicular to the straight edge of the fabric. Then mark from the edge of that line the desired height you measured beforehand. Now draw a top straight line. The rest of what you draw will be based on your desired hood shape. But if you don't feel comfortable making up your numbers, here are the dimensions on screen of the 2 hoods I have made so far. The last step in this trial is to take out your blades again and cut through both layers together, making sure everything is nice and even. And huzzah! You have all your pieces! Your third and final trial in this quest is to sew the cape together. As I mentioned at the beginning, you do not need a sewing machine to finish the cloak. But if you happen to have one, I will show you what to do as well. Either way, we are going to learn the same hand sewing finishes and techniques. There are 2 seams to assemble the cloak. First, the seam that forms the hood, and second, the seam that connects the hood to the cloak itself. So let's start with the hood. With your pieces together, right side of the material touching, mark 5/8 inches of seam allowance along the curved edge. Then pin this down. If you're using a sewing machine, line up the pieces at the machine and sew with a straight stitch all the way down, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and end. If you're hand sewing, get your thimble armor ready for the running stitch. To prep your needle, cut a piece of thread the length of your arm and thread it through the needle eye. This stitch will need 2 threads to make it strong, so take both ends of the thread and line them up. Once lined up, create a few knots on top of each other by making a loop and pulling the end through a couple times. And just like that, you're ready to sew. The running stitch is a basic over-under stitch. Start on one end of the material and pull the needle through. Think of your running stitch like a dashed line. The parts you can't see are where the thread is on the other side. As you go over and under the fabric, try and keep your stitches consistent and close together. Nothing longer than 1/4 inch wide to make your seams extra strong. Be patient with yourself if you don't get it on the first try. The more you practice, the better you will get. So don't give up. If your thread tangles oddly when you pull through, don't yank on it. Gently take your needle and lift the thread and straighten them out. Then pull. If your thread runs out, simply knot it a couple times and cut it right off. Before you attach your hood to the cloak, you want to finish the interior of the hood. This will make your hood look more professional when it's not on your head. Technically, you do not need to do this step to make your cloak wearable, but I highly encourage it, as it makes such a huge difference in its appearance. We are going to accomplish this in 4 steps. 1. Grading down the seam allowance. 2. Folding and pinning a flat felled seam. 3. Slip stitching by hand. And 4. Pressing it with your iron. For step 1, you will need your scissors again. Pick one side of the seam allowance and cut it down shorter than the other. Be careful though not to snip into the seam you just sewed and break your stitches. This is called grading down your seam allowance and will make the flat felled seam finish less bulky. A flat fell seam is a seam where one side is folded down twice, then sewn down. So we're gonna leave this alone for now because what happens is on the inside of this cloak, you do not see this. It gets tucked away so far in that you just won't see it even when you're wearing it. So we're gonna leave it alone for now, but we'll get back to it. You will start by hiding your knot in the fold. Then scoop up only a little bit of the fabric of the hood, not all the way through. This is one of the reasons why we wanted our material to be slightly thick, as it gives your needle more space to travel without revealing it on the other side. Once you've scooped on that end, go through the edge of the folded seam allowance. As you continue to scoop and go through the fold next to the stitch you just made, you'll see the thread starts to hide itself at a slight diagonal in the seam. And right when you reach the tip, you're going to knot. But knot quite a few times because you are only using single thread. Great. Then you're going to cut your thread and do the other side. Okay, you've reached the end. So you're going to make a knot. Grab it like this, go under, pull so you can see that's going to end up where you want it. Pinch, pull. Cool. The flat felled is all around. Now all we got is this really weird point here. Because of the way the cloak is, we're just gonna cut this off. So know where your point is before you go snippy snippy. And you're just going to cut off some of that. It's gonna make it less bulky, so when you turn this inside out, it can be more pointy. But remember, don't snip too close. You wanna go just above where you have your point. So, let's turn this inside out. When you finish slip stitching, take your hood to the iron, and on a low setting, press your seam from the inside of the hood to help flatten them. Don't keep your iron on for too long though. Press firmly and quickly with steam, and constantly check the material to make sure that you're not burning it. It's okay if you can't reach the point of your hood. The main goal is to get the majority of the area flat. And now you can admire the clean shape and look of your hood. And finally, we have the second major seam. First, mark the 5/8 seam allowance on the inside of the hood. Then, find the center of your cloak by folding it in half and place a pin at the center. You will be matching the center point to the center of your hood. Then pin the ends together. Use these points to stretch the material flat and then pin on both sides. Now you can sew your second seam together with either a machine or by hand like before. All right, so we have the hood attached to the cape itself. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our scissors, just like before when we trimmed down the flat fill here, we're gonna flat fill here. But instead of pushing downwards, we're gonna push up. So this bottom layer we're gonna leave alone, and this layer right underneath, we're going to cut. Now fold and pin that flat filled seam like before, and slip stitch it down with a single thread. A good rule of thumb is that wherever there is a raw edge of material, it needs to be finished somehow. But as you might have noticed, this cape shows raw edges along the bottom and sides. If you got the material I recommended for the project, you don't need to hem at all. But if your material does fray, you will need to mark 5/8 inches all around the sides and bottom. To accomplish the hem, you'll be folding the fabric twice. First, fold the hem up to the line you just drew, then fold it a second time over and pin it down. This will make the line you just drew the exact bottom edge of the cloak. If you have a machine, you can straight stitch along this edge. But if you want it to be almost invisible like before, hand sew a slip stitch all around. And once you give it a nice press from the inside with low heat, your cloak is ready for its closure. To close the cloak, you have many options. You can add ties or ribbons, buckles or toggles, or even cloak pins, like the ones the hobbits wear. For one of my cloaks, I opted for a fancy sew-on hook option. But as you can see, there are many options out there. Congratulations, adventurer! Your cloak is now complete. Feel free to traverse or frolic the fields and forests, and make sure to tag me on Instagram what you create. If you would like me to make more sewing tutorials, like and subscribe to the channel and comment below what you want to learn. I have many ideas for the future and I'm open to suggestions. The next tutorial will be on how to pad a dress form and will focus on a male figure. but the principles are the same for all genders and bodies. So if you want to make a clone of yourself, stay tuned for that video and the many cosplay adventures that we have on this channel, like the Kyoshi series and Scooby-Doo group cosplay. See you guys next time.